There we go. All right, welcome everyone to this community call, May 17th. I'm the host, Mark Duiker. I'm one of the community managers of Dapr. And this week we have a couple of new items. The one item dropped off. We were planning an item with Cratix and Dapr, but they had some internet issues, so we had to postpone that topic. So if you want to see that, definitely join the next community call. So today we're going to talk about the configuration API, which now is stable, which is great news. And we're going to show some improvements on the multi-app run, which was introduced in version 1.10. And we'll finish off with some, let's say, social highlights and some stuff that was shared in Discord show and tell. And as always, there's a room for an open discussion afterwards. All right, so let's start with you, Shivam, about the Dapr configuration API.
Hi, let me just share my screen. I'm audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah. Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, is it visible?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Hi everyone, I'm Shivam. And in this section, I will be talking about Dapr configuration API. So the context for this is that configuration API has been there in Dapr for a few releases. I think like 3 or more than 4 releases, and it has been in alpha. So with 1.11 release that is going to come out in the next few days, we are basically upgrading the config API from alpha to stable. So in this section, I will be talking about what exactly configuration API is there, a little bit overview of that, and then I will give a brief about what exactly we mean when we say we are moving the config API from alpha to stable, what all changes we have done, and then there will be a quick demo of basically how you can use config API in your application. So let's get started. So what exactly is config API? So essentially, a Dapr configuration API allows you to consume configuration items from one of the supported config stores. So essentially, when I say configuration item, it can be like say name of database or name of partition ID, name of secrets, or any other application configuration that you want to use in your application, right? So typically, what application do is that they store these configuration items in the config stores, and then you consume it or you retrieve it from the store. So what Dapr here helps, what Dapr config API helps you in that is it helps you in consuming configuration items, which are returned as read-only key value pairs. So typically these configuration items are stored in the config store as key value pairs only. So Dapr helps you consume these items, and then you can also subscribe to some of the keys, and so get notified whenever there is a config item changes, right? So typically this is the scenario. There is one application, then you have a sidecar along with it, and then you have basically you have the Dapr sidecar here, and then you have a config store. So for example, in this picture we have Redis, and there are a few configuration items that are stored there. For example, this my app DB name or say my app DB partition ID, and you have some values there. So if you want to fetch, if your application, you want to fetch these config items using Dapr, you have to do a very similar to like other API calls or other building block calls. You just have to call the configuration get configuration API with your config store name, and then with the key that you want to use, right? So so this is like I will explain what like the different formats of the configuration APIs. But currently, the config stores that are supported in Dapr, there are 3 config stores that we have the components in place. We have Azure App Configuration, which is in alpha, and then we have PostgreSQL and Redis. So both Postgres and Redis, actually all of these 3 are in alpha right now. But with 1.11, we are basically moving both Postgres and Redis to stable. Azure App Config, at least for now in this release, will be in alpha, right? So moving on, so like just giving a brief about what all APIs are exposed as part of this configuration building block. So here you have Get API. where you can call this API which has this route, right? So you can like v1.0 configuration and then store name, and you can use this endpoint to call to basically get get all the keys or get any specific key from your config store. Uh, uh, and then similarly, you can for subscribe, you just have to do a GET request to this endpoint. And then for unsubscribe, you have to pass in the subscription ID. You get the subscription ID as a response to the request that you made to the subscribe call. Right. So I will explain in the demo how exactly you can use these APIs in your application. And then on the right hand side, we have like an example of Redis config store component YAML file. So it's very similar to actually a state store component YAML file. So just instead of state stores.redis, you will have like state.redis, you will have a configuration.redis, and then you pass in the name, and then there are metadata according to your component, right? Uh, so so essentially, like this config API it has been in Dapr like I said for 3 or 4 releases, and it has been in alpha, and now we are moving it to stable. So what like before moving on to what exactly we have done as a part of moving the API from alpha to stable, I will just in brief explain what exactly we mean when we say that we are moving the API from alpha to stable, right? So in Dapr, say we say API is an alpha API. So a meaning of that is that API is kind of like not production ready. It might have some bugs in its implementation, and it is there kind of safe for testing. It may have backwards incompatible changes, and so we basically can break. We can basically can break the APIs in case that is required. The alpha APIs might not have support in all of the SDKs or say core SDKs. And then it may not be like highly performant. Basically, it might not be the sort of the best implementation that we want to go forward with in the future. So essentially, it's like in alpha API, we can have breaking changes as well, and it's kind of not in the production ready stage. So this is what the stage config API had been till now, till like 1.10 release. Now, when we say that we are moving to stable, we mean that now this configuration API is ready for production users. There will be in future, there will be no backwards incompatible changes. There is the support in like all of the code SDKs like Python, Go, Java, and .NET. And we have performance numbers published for the API, and then we have perf tests and other tests to prevent regression and catch errors, right? So this is what we basically mean when we say that we are moving from alpha to stable, right? Now, specifically in the context of configuration API, so this is the tracking issue 5522 in Dapr runtime, which tracks all the items that were required as a part of moving the API from alpha to stable. And it's just like this slide is just a brief of what exactly we have done as a part of it. So there were like kind of several bug fixes. It's not an exhaustive list, it's just like a selective list out of them. So for example, the subscribe API had it was like not returning all when subscribe was happening for all the keys, it was not subscribing to new keys. So that was fixed. ID has been added to configuration subscription API. Semantic versioning has been like basically versioning has been handled for both Redis and Postgres components. And then there was a minor bug in unsubscribe API as well, which was kind of giving incorrect response when you pass an incorrect subscription ID. Basically, not an expected response. So that has been fixed. So basically, there are kind of few bug fixes. And as I said initially, we are moving Redis and Postgres configuration stores to stable with this 1.11 release itself. We have also added the end-to-end tests and the performance test for the API to catch regressions and catch errors if there are any in implementation. And all the core SDKs like Java, .NET, Go, and Python, they have been updated as per the SDK specification that had been approved earlier. And the quick starts also have been added and updated, right? So basically, this makes like kind of these are kind of the major items that we did to move the API from alpha to stable. And now with this 1.11 release, we are going to declare the config API stable. So yeah, this is what I had in slides. Now I will just quickly give you a quick demo of how you can use the basically sample application that is using the configuration API, and how you can use these APIs, right? So this is a simple Go application. It has been kind of like modified from the quick starts itself that we have. So is the font okay? Or should I increase it? Anyone can just
maybe bump it up one level. Thanks.
This should be fine. Yeah. So I'll just first just give a brief about what exactly this application is doing. So this is just a normal Go application. Initially, it just tries to fetch some keys from the configuration store. So now you can see basically to get a key to get a value from the config store, what you have to do, you just have to do HTTP call to this to the endpoint, and then you have to use like this the same endpoint that I had shown in the slide with the configuration, and this config store is the name of is the name of the component metadata YAML file. Basically, it's here, right? So here you have seen declared its name as config store. So this is what it is, and then for basically for fetching any specific key, you can add it as a query parameter in the URL, right? So you just have to do a GET request, and then you get a response, and then if everything is okay, it just prints out in the console. So this is what here we are using the GET API for the config API. Now for basically subscribe and unsubscribe. So basically before subscribing, the application has to expose an endpoint where the Dapr application will be sending the updates on the subscribed keys. So it is very similar to like say a PubSub subscription, where application has to expose an endpoint. And if you're using SDKs, then mostly SDKs are going to handle that. But otherwise, the application has to expose that endpoint. So for example, here, because I'm directly using the HTTP API, so the application exposes this endpoint for receiving any updates on the subscribed keys, and whenever it receives the updates, it just it does nothing. It just prints it in the console, right? And then here we actually call the subscribe API. So again, you see here for basically for subscribing, you just have to do a GET request to this endpoint, which like v1.0 alpha 1 configuration, config store, and subscribe. Please note that here it is like alpha 1 for now, because like the endpoint is still not basically we have not released yet, and I'm using like an a released version of runtime itself. But once 1.11 has been released, you can use just v1.0 endpoint. Right. So here we're just doing the subscribe call. You get the subscription ID, and then basically after I think some time you will be doing an unsubscribe. Yeah, so we basically wait for 20 seconds, and then we call the unsubscribe API, which is again very similar to subscription call. Pass the config store name and the subscription ID that you got as a response from the subscribe call, and the unsubscribe suffix for unsubscribe endpoint, right? So this is what the application is basically doing. It will try to fetch some keys in starting, and then it will subscribe to keys, and you can see it is subscribing to these two keys, order ID 1 and order ID 2, right? So I will just quickly run this application to show. So because it is trying to do a GET request, basically fetch these items in the starting, so I have to store these keys beforehand. So let's say I just store order ID 1 with the value val1. I have my basically I'm using Redis config store, and I have Redis up and running already. So yeah, so I have stored basically with order ID 1 val1, order ID 2 val2. Now I will just run the application with the component YAML file. So for the component YAML file, I just showed this is the component YAML file that I'm using, which is just using Redis host as the local host, and there is no password, and the name of the store is config store. right? So I will just run the application, and it should, yeah. So you can see here it has got the configuration like items for this order ID 1 as val1 or A2 as val2, and it is already giving you this app is subscribed. Now let me see, I just update it with order ID 1 val3. So here you get it, you update say order ID 2. Sorry, the app is down. Let me just okay. It just waits for 20 seconds. So that's why. So let me see. Yeah, let's subscribe again. So yeah, basically like you keep updating keys and you will keep getting the notifications, right? So here you see basically using the Dapr API, the application is doing a is fetching the configuration items from the config stores, and then it has also subscribed to the keys, and whenever you update a key in the config store, the application receives the updates, right? One key thing to note is that and I also pointed this in the slide that Dapr basically Dapr sidecar does not have write permissions to the config store. So essentially, with the Dapr configuration API, you'll be only able to fetch the config items and subscribe to them, but you will not be able to modify them. We don't have basically admin permissions for the config store, and so that has to be separate. Like for updating it, I directly use the Redis CLI to update it, right? So yeah, so there, this was the quick demo. And yeah, with this basically, like I said, with 1.11 release, we are moving. We are moving we've been moving API to stable. So yeah, that's it from me. Any questions? Anything from someone?
That is really great to see, Shivam. Nice demo. Thank you. So Paul was asking for, I'd love to hear a bit more about some of the use cases that people want to use the configuration API for. And Alice responded to that, but I would still like to hear it from you as well. So Alice responded that maybe you want to try to keep track of the log level across environments and across applications, and if it's dynamically available to the app containers. So that could be one use case. But what are the other typical use cases you would try to use the configuration API for?
Yeah, so primarily, like basically, you're using whenever someone uses configuration store, that is primarily to store any of the application configuration that you want to store, right? So, for example, say you might have some secrets or some say databases that you are using, or like some say partition IDs or anything that is basically dynamic in nature and that can update while your application is running. So a crude way of doing it would be like basically storing it in a say state store, and then like regularly watching over it and saying if that isn't updated, then you do some action or something. So this basically config store or configuration API does all the nasty work for you. So essentially, you can just store these configuration items like say secret name of secrets or any say dynamic strings or something in the config store, and you can subscribe to them using the key value, using the keys. And so whenever they are updated in the config store, you will get a notification, and then you can do the action. So this is, I think, the prime difference from what it differentiates from say state store, right? Because in state store also you can store the item, but you want people to like subscribe to this, or you want people to receive updates on those keys. So that is the primary use case that you can think of for the configuration API.
Yeah, to me, the subscription is really the major benefit of the API, because if you just need the get operation, you're better off using the state store, because the Dapr state get API has many more features than what the configuration get API currently has. I know we are planning on, adding other features in the future, like versioning, so you can query for different versions of your configuration, which is extremely beneficial. But getting subscribed to configuration changes, I think, is really good, because it allows developers to know that their application doesn't actually have to restart whenever configuration changes, right? Where today you would basically, like, for example, if you run on Kubernetes, you'd need to do a rollout restart, which means downtime. Even if you're running with multiple replicas, you have to make sure that everything's drained, yada, yada, yada. With the configuration subscription API, you don't need to restart your instances, right? You just get subscribed immediately when the value changes. And that's a big quality of life improvement for anyone who needs these across the board configuration changes.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's also super cool to be able to see this get to a V1 status. As you pointed out, all of the needs and requirements to be able to get there. So it's amazing to have, the community has provided so much input to this. And I think the thing now is that, if you are using the feature API, we'd love to hear you in the RC to make sure that when it comes out for the 1.11 release, that it fits with all the scenarios that you're using it for, and to try it out.
Yeah, and just one minor thing I would wanted to add, like from the Aaron's comment, the versioning thing has already been added in. Basically, it is already there in the configuration API currently itself. Like say, basically for the config stores for which basically natively supports storing multiple versions, you can actually store multiple versions in the config store, and then you can fetch it or say subscribe to a specific version itself. For example, like say Postgres supports storing multiple versions, so there you can do a get call for a specific version itself, and then you can like fetch data. So yeah, that exists in the current implementation.
Oh, that's really great. I didn't even know we added that. That's great.
Very cool. I have one question, and which language client SDKs are now supported with configuration API?
Sorry, can you repeat?
So which languages are now supported? So which client SDKs can we use with the configuration API?
Currently, like the chains, we already have the support in all of the core SDKs, Go, Python, Java, .NET, and JavaScript is also there. Yeah, so all of the, at least the core SDKs that I remember, all of these have support for config API.
Excellent. Right.
And there's also the quick starts as well, I believe, on there for configuration API.
Yes. For all of the languages, we have the quick starts in place.
Yep, and those quick starts have the HTTP and the SDK kind of equivalents of how you do it.
Yes.
Perfect.
Good.
All right. Any other questions for Shivam before we move on?
Okay. Thanks.
Right. Thank you very much, Shivam. Let me quickly share my screen. So the next topic is the multi-app run improvements by Pravin. Are you ready to share again, Pravin?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
All right, perfect.
Okay. So hello. Last release we introduced multi-app run feature to orchestrate like running multiple apps in self-hosted environment with a Dapr YAML file. It's like multi-app run template configuration file. So I'm going to talk about one of the enhancement that we did recently, which is related to the logging destination change. So if you can see the current behavior of log. So all the logs are like simple and they are just written to std out, and they don't include like specific details about apps, whether apps are running or not running, or they are erroring out. So user are like they will have to go to the log directory and check the specific log files and see that if the apps are running fine or they're having specific issues in the apps. So the solution to this is we have introduced two specific fields in the run template itself. These are Dapr log destination and app log destination. So these two flags will tell like where Dapr logs would be written and where app log would be written. The supported values are file console and file end console. So as the name suggests, that file, if we specify that log destination is file, the logs will be written to a file. If we specify console, the log would be written to console. If someone wants to write at both the places, they can specify file and console, and the logs would be written to both the places. I'll just show a small demo to demonstrate how these flags value would work. So here, So this is our old distributed calculator app. What we have here is Dapr run file, Dapr.yaml file, which consists of all the apps configuration here. As we can see here, I have not mentioned any log destination. So what happens is by default Dapr log destination is always file, and by default app logs would be written to both file and std out. So if we do not mention any log destination, Dapr logs would be written to file, and apps log would be written to both places, std out and file. So I would just run these. So as we can see that they have the logs have started coming out with hyphen or equals to app prefix. So these logs are coming from the specific apps, while there is no Dapr specific logs written on the console. So if I do any operation, let me go to my browser. And if I do any add operation, and let's see the logs. So here we can see the add application is writing logs to console. And since these are app logs, they would be written to files also. So here are the files. Okay, I would just kill this process and specify some log destination, which is in this case, I'm specifying Dapr logs to be written to console and app logs to be written to also console, and that is only for the add app. Other apps would follow whatever the configuration they have. So as we can see, we have started getting Dapr logs also, and if we see clear, pay attention here. So these logs are for the first app, which is add app, and all other pieces remain same. Now again, if we see this value here, so we can see this console output for the add operation, but there is no operation for the there is no logs for the recent operation, as we have mentioned that logs for this app would be only written to console. If we do any other operation like multiplication, so that we can see that multiplication is writing to console, as well as if we see multiplication logs, so they would be coming here also. So yeah, that's all for the demo on multi-app run.
Thank you very much, Pravin. I'm really happy to see this. Yeah, so I was doing some demos today, and that could have definitely used this already. So I'm really happy with this improvement. I see some in the chat. Tom asking, are multi-app still only for Linux? And Shivam is saying yes, it's only for Linux, Mac. Asking about timeline for Windows. That is under discussion. Anyone else has some questions about multi-app run and this maybe specific improvement or other things? Yeah.
This is Archer. So first of all, thanks for the demo briefing. I do think that this is a great feature for Dapr CLI, as we discussed this previously. Can you go back and show the YAML for the run, the Dapr YAML? Yeah. So the app G. So you're saying that by default, the default is always file? Is that the default for the logs destination?
Yeah. So what we have came to conclusion is that for Dapr logs, the default is always file. So and for the app logs, because normally when user interact with normally when user starts multiple apps or whenever he wants to interact with those apps, so So the default behavior is a user would want to see some output on the screen or on his console. So for that purpose, we have kept app logs by like default behavior to be written to console as well as file. But Dapr logs by default would be written to only file. User can change this by mentioning to console and.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, so there's a difference because also thinking the sidecar, you cannot differentiate which app is a log, doesn't the log message belong to, right?
Right.
And but for the app you can. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Right, and Mark was asking, can you provide the setting to be global to all apps?
Rather than each app individually, can you just put it in one place and it applies to all the apps that are inside this file?
That should be possible. I'll have to verify once.
I'm really pleased with the improvements that we're making to this. You know, my opinion on this is that if Docker networks didn't exist, we probably wouldn't have this multi-app experience. The number of users I personally know they're using Docker Compose with Dapr for the local dev experience is staggering. And most of them are basically running into issues with networking due to Docker networks and things not being able to connect. And so the major difference with this is that, you know, it relies on the machine's flat network. It doesn't make use of virtual networking, which makes everything, you know, just work. The downside of it is that it kind of like replicates or just duplicates a lot of stuff that's in Docker Compose that we're kind of chasing after in terms of feature work. But I think if this provides users with a much better experience, then we should definitely invest more in that. And so my only feedback, which is to us maintainers and also community members, is if we think this is a major improvement in user experience, maybe we should do more to put in front of users and gather more feedback about this, because the local development experience with Dapr should be like extremely easy to get into and to onboard to. But I also like the Docker Compose one personally.
All right. Great.
I mean, one more question.
Yeah.
I noticed that on line 11 and line 23, the app ID is duplicated. I don't know if it was by accident or on purpose, but shouldn't it like fail to start, or do we allow multiple app IDs to run the same multiple times?
So I think we do allow like same app ID to be started. Just that it like the underlying ports and all should be if the ports and all are different, they will start. I think this we have discussed before also, where in some releases, some prior releases like 1.6 or 1.7 somewhere, we have introduced this behavior to allow multiple apps with the same app ID. So that is continuing from there, Arthur.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Good point. I didn't know this either. Yeah, good to know. Right. All right. Okay, so thank you very much. Again, this looks really nice, and I'm definitely going to use it more. And let's move on to the final section, and that is the Discord show and tell. Actually, it's a bit broader than Discord show and tell, because unfortunately there wasn't that much news now. So definitely asking to all of you, if you have some news that you would like to share, put it in there. Maybe if you find some news that someone else made who is maybe not in our Discord, just drop that news in the show and tell, right? I mean, it doesn't need to be content that people created themselves, because maybe they're not aware of this Discord yet. Even better, just drop it in there and then tell those people that there is a Dapr Discord so they can share it there. So I found 2 more articles by Martino Bordin on LinkedIn. So he's doing a whole series on Dapr. So I want to click on the links now. You can do it yourself later, but there's definitely more to come. And I've also invited him to tell us a bit more in one of the next community calls. I think that's nice to have. So if you are like sharing a lot of stuff and sharing it in the show and tell channel, then you can expect an invite from me to share the information here. The most of it is more like a Dapr in the news, and then I mean more like in the Twitterverse. There's definitely a conference season again, so we have lots of people like talking at conferences and doing like a Dapr specific talks or talks that are definitely also revolving around Dapr. So Bilgin was at Java Day Istanbul talking about cloud native and Dapr. And there, Mark was involved in a recording to promote the Dapr community with a nice session there. So definitely have a look. Then Cecile Philip, he's a developer advocate at Stripe, was doing a talk about the workflow, Dapr workflows. That's definitely a very hot topic at the moment. Then I did a session with Thomas from Solus during the EDA summit about the Dapr event mesh. And again, Mark and Alice did also a session there about building portable event-driven apps with Dapr. Then Mauricio was at Devox UK, and also Bilgen was there to do 2 sessions. So Bilgen did a session you see here, and then Mauricio also did a session. Then there was the Open Source Summit, where there were also several sessions. So here we see Sam and Alice talking about Dapr. And we see Kendall and Mark again about the Dapr workflow. And then I also did a session last week at DevCon in Netherlands. It was a session about, well, this session was about Dapr 101, but the conference was about mobile app development. Then I saw on Twitter that there is a new workshop out there where Dapr plays a quite prominent role. It's called the Pet Spotter. So it revolves around an application that you can use if your pet is missing. So it sounds like a very fun use case. So definitely check this out. And last but not least, I did a Dapr workflow session today at the Tech Nation conference in Utrecht today. So yeah, lots of stuff going on. I'll do this every community call. I just gather lots of Dapr news on Twitter and LinkedIn. It's very nice to see all these sessions. Definitely a lot of workflow sessions these days. So if you have some sessions which maybe are not shared on Twitter or LinkedIn, definitely send them over so I can include them in these calls. And definitely tell everyone that to join the Dapr Discord, right? Definitely keep on feeding more stuff in the show and tell channel, because it's great to see what the community is doing with Dapr. Then, are there any other questions, comments, suggestions, anything you'd like to see next? I mean, the next community call in 2 weeks, then we'll have the Cratix talk, which we actually planned for today. But if you have any ideas for other topics, please do let me know. And oh, Paul was mentioning in the chat, just did a VS Live keynote on invincible apps, the easy way using Dapr. Oh, excellent. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So definitely need to send some pictures or anything indeed to me, and I will include that in the next one so we can share it, Paul.
Will do.
Yeah.
Also, we should probably mention that the CFP for KubeCon North America is now open. So if anyone wants to submit a talk about Dapr, now is the time. It ends June 18th, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a good call. Yeah, should definitely start on that. Yeah. Do you have any tips of writing CFPs? I'm betting on a lot of workflow talks again, probably.
I see Arthur submitted one. That's great. Yeah, I'm gonna submit 1 or 2 also.
Great. If there's no more questions for anyone, thanks a lot for attending this community call, and I hope to see everyone in the next one in 2 weeks. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.